I just want to give a shout out to those who survived child abuse. Those that are living with that trauma, probably got a diagnosis on top of it. And I think it's unfair that the perpetrators, especially when you're going back in the 70s, 80s, whenever it is, doesn't matter, those perpetrators have gotten away with it because they call it historic abuse, right? So sometimes you can't do anything about that anymore, but you are living with the consequences of what they have done to you. The consequences of what they've done to you. They stole your childhood. You've ended up with a diagnosis. And you'll end up also not having anyone to talk to about it. And most of the time, sometimes your family don't want to know, and they just turn a blind eye towards it. And your friends maybe not be able to comprehend it. But you hear more and more as I get older, more and more people saying, yeah, it happened to me, it happened to me, it happened to me. And on top of that, like I said, you end up with a diagnosis. So you're dealing with a diagnosis. I deal with a diagnosis of EUPD, emotionally unstable personality disorder, very scary label. No cure for that, right? However, it's about managing your moods. So we're looking at traumas and triggers. But the thing is, I am so angry of having a diagnosis that relates to my childhood trauma, because it means I can never run away from what the perpetrator done to me. It's almost like, yep, you're a victim of child abuse, and here is a label to go with that. And that label, each time that you have to answer to any services, have you got any mental health? Yes, I have. It's a trigger, constant trigger, and a constant reminder of, I have this label because he stole my childhood. And there's going to be many more people out there that's probably going to feel like myself. I am of a ripe old age right now, getting on in life, but I am still annoyed and still affected by what somebody done to me. And having to manage my moods is, well, that's a long, painful journey. And just to regulate my moods, I have to regulate my moods. And maybe you'll be able to relate to this, but I don't want to say it just happens to women, it happens to men as well. And the men get really unnoticed, to be honest. Not a lot of men come forward and say it happened to them. Nobody really wants to keep talking about, I was abused. Nobody wants to do that. They want to actually have a normal life. But unfortunately, what is a normal life if you are labelled on top of what you've gone through? So I just want to give a shout out to those survivors and say, please speak your truth, because it's your story, your journey, your pain, and maybe you'll help somebody else through it. I also want to say that after many years of dealing with trauma and still constantly trying to regulate the emotions and live a normal, practical, normal life as much as I can, when I do raise awareness, because that's what I do for a living, I raise awareness around suicide prevention and what you can do to tackle the underlying issues or what causes depression. And in my case, sometimes what causes depression is triggers, the trigger points. So when I'm doing awareness, or when I'm speaking to people from my past, and they might not have spoken to them for many, many years, in the space of a year, I've had 2 people say to me, I thought so. I knew that guy was a weirdo. He used to babysit many more children. Now I know there's 2 victims, but to hear other people say they thought that he was a kiddie figure, it kind of gives me validation that I'm not going out of my mind. Even though I know it's true, it's almost like I see you. Someone saying, I see you. I know, I understand. it doesn't make me feel relieved in any shape, way or form. It's more like, wow, you who are somebody from my past can recognize that it may have happened. Now I know it happened, but what also bothers me is when we are victims of this kind of stuff, we lose our family as well. So it's almost like the perpetrator has stolen your childhood, stolen most of your life, and stolen your family. And so it's unfair that the perpetrators get away with it because they're dead, or the police terminology is it's called historic child abuse, so therefore we can't do anything about it. It's almost like they've destroyed your life. And that's what they do. They destroy life. I just want to say, if you're a parent or grandparent, please teach and educate. Or don't, never mind whether you're a parent or grandparent. If you're a person this has happened to, educate other people on the signs, symptoms, and what they can do to raise awareness on the situation, because there are so many kiddie fiddlers out there that prey on your children. And if we don't openly speak about these things, then we're not going to be able to protect anyone's child or the parent from the awareness. So we need to give that awareness out there. I speak on suicide prevention. I speak to many people out there and do interviews with people to get that awareness out there, signs, symptoms. Well, it's almost like when I ask people, or people tell me what their diagnosis is, it's no more needs to be said, because the diagnosis is telling me that there's been some kind of abuse, particularly emotionally unstable personality disorder, or also known as borderline personality disorders.